So I thought I'd make this video because just out of importancy, my biological father, I was, once again, thinking about my past and what had happened and whatnot, and who knew what. Don't want to make anything into this, but whoever it is that's doing the investigation, whoever's trying to put anything together or separate, is going to be entirely up to y'all. But I think this information will be very resourceful to Mikayla, my mother, and Julian, and Frankie. And this is gonna. When I was, the story goes, when I'm 24 years old, right after my transplant, I get a job at Ridgeway's. When I work at Ridgeway's, I'm making, I think, $8, not even $8. I think I was making $7.50. I was making $7.50 an hour. And I didn't understand, I was like, I just got out of a hospital, gave the hospital, $500,000 insurance, and never to sue anybody, signed a contract, and just went back to work, hoping that God would bless me. But anyway, I went to work, and within like 2 months, I was having my electricity bill get cut off because I couldn't afford it, or I was getting very close to, and I was almost like I was having to borrow money, and it was just horrible. I didn't have any money, couldn't afford insurance. And I go to work one day. I go to work and yada yada. And then I was told, I went to my hospital visit, a regular checkup, and when I went there, they told me about this Metro Care Services that was in downtown Carrollton. And it's a Metro Care Services where I think there's some nuns and some people there and some other staff members, and I think it could be church-owned, I'm not too sure, that helps patients pay their mortgage bill, or gives them money for food. And you have to be, you have to be basically broke. So when I get there, there's a guy by the name of Hector also. And he looks a lot like my biological father, but he's not my biological father, right? And I noticed that he looked at me and he goes, oh yeah, my name's Hector too. And so he goes like this, and he just kind of looks at me suspicious, because it came out of nowhere. I could tell the guy he's most likely gay. He had a sort of a flamboyant personality to him. I'm not saying that's bad, that's just how he was. And I'm talking to him normally, and as soon as I said, oh, your name's Hector too, and he kind of goes, well, if you need a bottle of milk, we can probably give you, $6 or $7. What kind of car do you drive? And I said a 2000, I think it was a 2002 Honda Accord. And basically I was told that if they know that you have money and you have a car, or they know if you have a car, depending also what kind of car, they won't want to help you, because obviously they want to help those that are even more in need. And they told me, and they said that, I don't know what it was, the guy said, he goes, well, we could probably give you enough for some milk, and I don't know what this personality or investigation is, but I feel very deeply that this guy knew, and I think my biological father was still alive at that moment. I don't know if he's still alive. Now, I think it's important for me to say this because I don't know who was doing the investigation, and I told him, I was like, well, yeah, my dad's a World War II veteran. In my mind, every conversation I ever have with anybody about my father, I always have a conversation believing that he's my biological father. I am of his blood. There's no existence of picture that I am from a different father at all in my mind. I don't even have conversations. Otherwise, otherwise I would have talked to my mother and whoever it was. So I think it's important for me to say this because I don't know if maybe somebody was trying to reach out to him or they were trying to see if I was trying to merge with him, because the idea that he showed up at Julian's apartment, if that was him, I don't even know if that was. I still don't know if that was it. Maybe it wasn't. I don't know to this day. The only way of a million ways that he could have ever shown up there is if somebody told him, I need you to go there for whatever reason. Whatever reason. I don't know what that circumstance is. Either investigation, because Julian was living by himself at this time at that apartment. Julian was living at that apartment and he wasn't with his identical twin. And Julian was 15 years old, or 14 or 15. Yeah, he was in middle school? Yeah, I think he was in middle school. He could have been younger than when I got married. But Julian was like 15. He was no younger than 14, but he was 14 to 15 years old when he was living in that apartment by himself. And I remember thinking to myself, because I was 20 years old when my father passed away. It was right before I turned 21, and it was before my father passed away. And I recall living there with Julian. He gave me a place to stay, and Julian was living at this apartment all by himself for like 6 months. He lived there by himself. I don't know what the story to this was. I got an argument with my mom. And I got upset because I felt that she had abandoned him and he was going to end up ruining his life. A lot of bad things could happen to him. Someone could rape him. Someone could do something. And Julian could tell that I was very concerned about his well-being. So I don't know how Julian reunited with his identical twin. I don't know whatever that story was even coming close. I don't know what this was, but if that was my biological father, the one out of a billion ways that he could have ever shown up was just to see how things were going. Like I said, the minute that this guy looked at me, he did not have any like, oh, I'm your father, or I miss you. It was none of that. It was just like, you're a person. He saw me when he walked by, like in one of these occasions or twice, he saw me sleeping on the floor. I was laying right there on the floor and I looked up. And I remember laying on the floor, looked over, I was like, damn, this guy looks exactly like me. So, they're making me pass gas. I think it's important for me to say this because by this age, I'm 20 years old. 4 years later, I have a transplant. I get out of the hospital and I get a job for the first time after I got fired, or they let me go because of my disease, and I was trying to make it recover all by myself. My hair just grew back. It was a couple of months, and I go to Metro Care Services, and there's a guy by the name of Hector. And as soon as I said that, it's weird. I say this because there used to be a guy by the name of Dale McHugh who used to be my counselor. And he's the one that referenced me to go to Metro Care Services, and he told me that them nuns are pretty mean people over there. They might not want to help you, but you can try to go over there if you need some help with the bills. And that's what happened. So I think, Mikayla, I think that's important to find out. I think it's important for you to know that there was someone that was trying to pose himself and I don't, in my mind, there is no reason why there's another guy. I am a fully belief and 100% in every way you can imagine that my biological father is Raymond Paloma. Raymond Hernandez Paloma. We have the same birthday. I was very close to my dad. We went out to eat. We went to restaurants. We went to my soccer games. He went to my school, representing me as his dad. He went to school meetings when I got in trouble. Any place, he went to Frankie's soccer games, he went to Frankie karate games, or practice, he took Julian to a couple games, we were a family. There is no reason why, because my mother never told him. My mother never had one conversation ever about my biological father to me. Still to this day, since I was a kid, my mother has never made one single conversation about my biological father. She just kept it to herself and just shrugged it off. So, I want to say this because I don't know if somebody, because what I'm thinking right now is I'm thinking that there was psychologists involved or somebody investigating to see what I knew, and that he ended up either wanting to intervene or he was wanting to find out. I don't know what the circumstances of the psychologist would have wanted, where the psychologist could have said, okay, send him over there, see how he behaves, how he feels, just don't say nothing to him. I don't know what those circumstances were because Julian was very young. I didn't understand because Julian was very young. Oscar's mom was the one that was hanging around with him. What sounds so crazy to me is that if that was Oscar's mom, Julian told me, and there was a couple of different guys that showed up. I do remember there was like one or two of the guys, and they were going to like the bazaar on Beltline and some of the ghetto areas in Dallas and known for drugs. And Julian told me this. He said he walked into his room one day and they were shooting up heroin. It was Oscar's mother and it was some other guy. Or the other guy was shooting, I'm not kidding, I swear to you, they walked in and they were shooting up heroin. Now, the reason I say this is because there was two kids there. I talked about the whole circumstances, but I'm so confused why this guy would show up. If there's drugs involved, there's kids, if he was my biological father, because he just showed up. I don't think he showed up more than twice. And I never saw this guy again. Now, I just want to say this because what I'm thinking right now is that there were psychologists involved, and then they were going to determine whether he was going to be a part of any of it or not. Because when I was in the car with my mother, her twin, which I thought it was my mother, what happened was she didn't like that guy showing up. So I say this, Mikayla, because I don't know if my biological father's still alive, but someone mentioned to me saying that he went to prison for a little while. He went to prison for a little while for something. I don't know what it was, what happened, but he went to prison for a little while. And I want to say it was Dale McEwen. I don't know if it was him. I don't think Dale McEwen is probably even alive anymore. I know he retired like a couple of years after I stopped working, after I stopped going to the doctor visits, because after about a year or two of me going to the doctor visits, he retired. And he was retired. He was already old. He was already like 70 years old. And this is 17 years ago. This is 15 years ago. If he was still alive, he would be like 95 years old. But, who knows? Maybe he still is. But I'm not blaming anything on him. He was a really good counselor. He was a really pretty good guy. But I say this because I don't know who was involved with what. I am so blindsided by this. I'm so confused to who it was that could have put an investigation on this to find out. You got to understand, there's no existence in my mind. Anytime that I spoke of my father, I spoke of that I'm his blood, I'm his material, because I've heard him, seen him have sex with my mother. So I think that this is important for me to say this to whoever it matters. I'm not trying to fetch out emotions from my biological father. I'm not saying that that's what I'm doing. My father for the rest of my life will always be Raymond Coloma. Now I say this because I don't know if he's still alive. I don't know what his relationship is with Mikayla, even if he was with Mikayla. But what I do know, maybe he's a child molester too. Maybe he tried touching Mikayla whenever she was a little girl. I don't even know I don't think he did. But I don't know this guy. I'm not going to point fingers. I'm not going to make stories up. He could be a really good guy, church guy. I don't know what the circumstances, but I think it's important for me to say this to whoever's going to matter. That he was mentioned to me, but I had no in my mind, like it was somebody else that was investigating this, looking into him. because I think that they knew my father died and they knew that he was gay, and they thought I was just going to jump to the other father and then just take whatever I want. And the truth is that it ended up, whoever it was, I don't know who the lawyers were, I don't know who took over everything, but I think it's important for me to say this. You make of it what you want, but someone was posing as my biological father when I went to go ask for help, and this guy didn't want to help me. And I told some of the counselors at that hospital, I said, I went there and they really didn't want to help me. I talked to some guy by the name of Hector, and you see, I told him, I said, this guy didn't want to help me, he didn't want to do anything. So they thought that I knew, and I didn't. So I don't know who the psychologists are. I'm not trying to make anything of this. Whatever information is going to be best to what you think is going to be best, do with what that is. I just thought it was best and more for me to say this. But like I said, I don't know what to think other than time has already kind of gone by pretty fast, and I don't know if he's still alive or has any desires to meet me officially. So, if I saw Mikayla, chances is she wants nothing to do with me. Very high chance. But I hope the best for everybody. Whatever my mother, immediate family, and the psychologist want, whatever they choose, whatever they want. I don't have any communication with my mother. They're only letting me speak to her identical twin, and that's it. Imposing and telling her and training her to malicious to come after me, and real vile words, and whatever it is that they're trying to deter or make sure never happens. You make of it. I'm not in charge. I'm not